Hi, friends. Jaime Kalman Chipko here with a little installment of Jaime Magic. So, one of the most magical things that happened for me in my life was when I learned how to deal with my triggers, things that trigger me emotionally, right? So, I don't practice magic per se, but I have my own experience with becoming more empowered, and that has felt like magic sometimes in my life. And so I wanted to share it with you so you can create your own magic in your own life. So essentially, when we get triggered by something, right? It's something happens, someone says something, and we feel an emotion in our body. And then what happens is we tend to react or respond from that emotional state. And then what we tend to do is you've heard people say, you create a story around it, right? What that means is that then you attach meaning to what happened or what was said to you, and then you also create a judgment about the person who said it or whoever was involved in that incident. So this can be very troubling to our relationships because the minute that we create a story about someone or something, then our mind starts to hold that story in place like it is the ultimate truth. It's how we felt it, experienced it, and remembered it. Therefore, it must be fact. And I remember reading somewhere once it said, feelings are not facts, but they are fantastic messengers. So I always am encouraging my clients and my daughter and myself and my friends and my family, when they have a big feeling about something, to really inquire into that feeling. What are you feeling? And what is the positive intention of that feeling? Remember, anger is your body's way of letting you know that you're not okay with something. Jealousy is your body's way of showing you what you want. Sadness is your body's way of showing you that you feel that you have lost something. There's a grieving that needs to take place. So, it's very interesting. If you listen to your feelings, you can get a lot of great information from them. And I think also the magical part of this is if you are willing to see yourself and your situation differently, amazing things can happen. Because as long as you're married to that one perception, that one way that it has to be, that story, then that's it, right? That's it. And all you can do is be in a very critical state around it. But if instead you step out of that critical state and into curiosity, now you're in a really wide open state. And I love curiosity as a transformative step, because when we're in a curious emotional state, we're wide open. We're able to receive information. We're willing to play what if in a positive way, right? We all know how to play what if in that negative, fatalistically thinking way, right? Where you're like, what if I ask that person out on a date and they say no? What if I get on the plane and the plane crashes? What if I put myself out there and I do a public speaking event and I do a horrible job and everyone laughs at me, right? We can play what if in a negative way all day long, but there are ways of playing what if in a really positive way, and here's how they can actually save your relationships. Okay, so let's say that you have a parent who tends to be very critical of you, or they have been in the past. That's your story of them. Your story is that your parent, thinks that you should be married with, 2 kids plus your job that you currently have, right? Or that you should have a better job. Maybe that parent is always, evaluating you and criticizing your choices. And maybe you feel, when you think about this parent, that you are never enough, not good enough, not loved enough, not worthy enough, just not enough, right? So that might be a person in your life who you don't look forward to talking to on the phone or visiting in person, right? And that's a shame, because if it's a parent, that's a pretty important relationship in your life. Now, we all know people who have had toxic relationships with parents. There are some parents that children have had to emancipate themselves from, or people could not continue relationships with. So I'm not talking about that level of dysfunction or abusive situations. That's not what this conversation is about. I'm speaking really about when you have a story about someone in your life, and I'm using the example of a parent, where you just can't see them as anything but critical of you. So you might feel triggered when they say something like, let's say that you share with them that you are throwing a baby shower for your friend. And the parent says, oh my goodness, I don't know how she does it with work and all these kids. You might hear that statement as she's talking about me. Like I should be having the baby shower for myself. I should be having the kids. She thinks that this other woman is so great because she's balancing work and family, and I'm not doing that. And I'm sure that she's thinking, like, why haven't I gotten it together yet, right? Now, notice in the example, the mother didn't say any of that. She just said, wow, how does she manage it all? So, what we want to do when we feel triggered, when we have a reaction to something that someone says, and then we feel an emotion around that reaction, whether it's shame, rage, frustration, resentment, we feel attacked, we feel defensive, right? So, you're feeling some of these words as I'm describing them to you. These are all triggered states. Well, if we react in the conversation from that triggered state, there's not a whole lot of places for that conversation to go that are really positive or that are really going to connect you at all. There's a lot of places that conversation can go that will continue to separate you, to continue to, make that a just disjointed conversation and relationship. So if your goal in that relationship is peace, if your goal is to have a peaceful relationship, it's an inside job, my friends. We would love all day long to change other people if we could. And if you're like, oh, I would love them if I could just change one little thing. Well, that's not love. That's a preference, right? And so what we want to do is we want to take a look at this relationship and say, okay, this relationship, this person may not be the way that I wish it was, but my goal for this relationship is peace. So this idea really comes from A Course in Miracles, which is a spiritual text, which is super helpful for showing up to your life in a different way and seeing things differently. And it defines a miracle as being simply the result of a shift in perception. So you stop seeing something through the lens of fear, and instead you perceive it through the eyes of love. So a relationship that used to cause you a lot of anger and resentment suddenly becomes a relationship from which you see possibility, you see growth, you see things about yourself you didn't see before that you can nurture and strengthen and empower. So sometimes these relationships, I believe it was Joseph Campbell who used to refer to them as your petty tyrants. Unless it was Carlos Castaneda. I have to check my data. Who would know? My dad would know, because he used to use this term all the time. He used to talk about your petty tyrants, the people that show up in your life and they seem like you're perpetrators, but really they're your teachers. Because if they are pushing a button, it just means that they're showing you that you have a button there that can be pushed. So our triggers are really our invisible buttons. And so it's a great thing when people push our buttons, because they are showing us that there's a button there that can be pushed. So it's an inside job. The other person doesn't have to change. If we want peace in this relationship, we want to take a look at, what are we reacting to? What are our triggers? What do they mean? What are those buttons about exactly? And is it this other person who's making you feel this way? Or do you have a story about yourself that they are seeming to validate in you? Okay, now I want to back up really quickly. When I say that, the other person doesn't have to change, that's not a blanketed statement. There are times when people need to clean up their act too, or they need to clean up their side of the street too. Maybe they're using language that is unkind or unconscious or unthoughtful, or maybe they are being judgmental and aren't aware of it, and it's hurting your feelings, and you need to draw a boundary and say, hey, listen, you're entitled to your opinion, but I would appreciate that you don't express that opinion to me every time that you see me, because I feel really sad when you say that, right? Because I hear that as a criticism. And then that can open up an opportunity for them to share with you that maybe they're not trying to be critical, maybe they didn't think they were being critical, and they have a chance to look at their language and make a change. And you can suggest things that you would rather them say instead, but also be willing to let them clean up that side of the street themselves, okay? So I want to try to keep this on target if I can. Healing is an inside job. And like I mentioned, you can clean up your side of the street and be tempted to want to clean up the other person's side of the street, but just try to stay on your own, okay? Because that's really where you have any kind of choice. And empowerment is the freedom to choose, your own reactions. That is so empowering. It's not about overpowering another person or dominating another person or changing another person. It's about being willing to look at yourself honestly and with forgiveness and compassion, and to really question if the way that you are perceiving a situation in a person is the whole story. Is that the truth? Or is there another way that you could see this? How can you be curious about what that person said? And this is where I like to play what if in a positive way. So what if that mother in that example about the baby shower, what if she wasn't insinuating that her daughter should be married? What if she was just marveling about the fact that this particular woman has a very full life, right? And what if, let's say it was you who were the daughter who was reacting, what if you were making that mean? Maybe there was some inner critic inside of you that felt that you should have these things in order for your life to be full, for your life to have value. So we want to check in and say, what if it's me that has a story about myself that is not very supportive? Is there any part of my own mind that is judging me and my life choices and whether or not my life has value in and of itself as it is? And if so, if I agree with that criticism on any level, would I be willing to have that thought shifted, changed, or lifted from me and healed for me? If I could, would I be willing to do that? So I love what if in that way, that curiosity of like, wouldn't it be cool if I didn't have this thought? How would that feel? How would that feel if my mom could just say, wow, that woman's amazing. She's balancing work and family. And I could just go, yeah, that's amazing, huh? Good for her. And not put any sauce on it, not make it mean anything about me. Wouldn't that be lovely? So hear how I'm kind of shifting into thinking that way. So what this does is it stops you from perpetuating the story that the mother, let's say in this example, that your mother is this critical person. Instead, she can just have a thought, express that thought, and you are at choice how you hear that thought, whether you hear it as a criticism or whether you hear it as a neutral statement, right? If we agree with what we think the criticism is, we're going to get triggered. But if we don't agree with it, then it's like it moves through us like water. So I think that the idea here is that we give ourselves the opportunity to do the inner healing work that we need to do, to listen to our critical thoughts and inquire into what are those critical thoughts trying to do for us? How are they trying to help us? Is there any room for growth? And is that what that critical thought is trying to, motivate us to look at? And then who would we be without that critical thought? What would life be like if we didn't think that thought? How would this relationship be different if we weren't constantly attaching this description to this person that they're critical and judgmental? So the less that we see ourselves as, being judged, the less that we will judge others quite often. So it's a beautiful give and take, really. So curiosity is an excellent way to crawl out from underneath the crushing rock of criticism. And it's also a great way to unhook yourself when you feel triggered by a person who has shown up in your life in a particular way and you feel like they're critical of you. And now whenever you're with them, you can't help but hear anything but criticism. If that's happening, you need to adjust your own listening of what you're hearing and ask yourself, why am I hearing all this criticism? Do I agree with the criticism? So what is the criticism exactly that you feel you're getting from this person? And also ask yourself, how does this criticism make me feel? What are the feelings that come up for me? Is it anger? Is it guilt? Is it shame? Because the feeling is a great messenger, so it's going to show you, what is the positive intention to the feeling that you have? Fear is our body's way of keeping us safe, right? There's a positive intention to fear. So I love to ask, what are these feelings trying to show me so that I can then get some really great information. Now, once I know that, once I know, like, what have I been making this relationship mean about myself and about this other person? Would I be willing to see that differently? That's where I like to bring in Course in Miracles. Am I willing to see this differently? And if the answer is yes, but you don't know how you'd like to see it differently, can't quite get there yet, that's okay. Because apparently our only job is to invite the miracle. We don't do the miracle. We just notice when we're not at peace, and we ask that inner teacher of peace that resides within our conscious, our divine mind, to do the healing for us. So that's when you might say, I've been noticing that I've been having very critical thoughts about myself, that my life is not enough, that I do not have, that I am not productive or of value because I don't have children in my life, right? Let's say that's the story. And every time someone says something to me regarding people with kids, I feel this story come up in me. This story is causing me great pain, and I would love to see myself differently. I'm willing to know I am not this story. I choose peace instead of this. So that is a quote directly out of A Course in Miracles. I choose peace instead of this. What I love about this is that you can also, if there is a very specific thing that you want to feel about yourself or think about yourself instead, use that. But sometimes when we're in pain, we don't really know what it is that we want, or we don't know how to see that relationship differently. And so if we can't imagine that person any differently, it can be stressful to try. So what removes that stress for me is to not put that pressure to see the result. Instead, to invite a peaceful outcome by just saying, I choose peace, instead of this story that I have about my mom or whoever it is in your case. So by choosing peace, you're taking that pressure off to see it a specific way. And then the beauty is the universe can just bring it to you in whatever shape or size that peace is meant to come to you, however you are most able to receive it and enjoy it and work with it. So I hope that that's helpful when you are triggered by someone, to stop making it about the other person. Just press pause on that, because that's your own judgment, your own criticism coming up and getting defensive and pushing back. So just know, if you do that, it's okay. It's just going to delay your happiness. So what you want to do is just go, you know what? I don't want to go down this road. Instead, I would love to see a healed perception instead of this. And the fastest way for me to get there is to say, what am I making this criticism mean? How is it making me feel? Am I willing to see this differently? And I choose peace instead of this. And then breathe, let it go, give it to God, give it to the universe, give it to Allah, give it to Bob, whatever it is. Give it to nature, give it to your higher mind, your higher power. There is no religious dogmatic playbook here. It is just about getting out of your own way and helping your mind so that your mind can work with you in a really supportive and empowering way. So I wish you so much peace in all of your relationships. And I know that this practice is tricky. It is really hard not to take things personally. It's also really hard if you've had a person in your life who has overtly and directly criticized you, right? And been very judgmental about you. It is so hard to imagine them being differently or to even give them the benefit of the doubt. I know how hard that is. But I urge you, and I send you strength and support, over the interwebs, that you can do this. This is about your healing. It's not about them. It's about you giving yourself the peace of mind, the space, and the respect and the love to have a new perception of this relationship in a way that allows you to enjoy your life in a more peaceful, positive, and purposeful way. So please understand that saying it's not about the other person, it's not letting them off the hook for all the stuff they might have done to you in the past. It's not about that. It's about just saying that you really are holding the space for yourself to know that you are loved, worthy, enough, and safe. Okay, so it's an inside job. And as you do that inner work, you'll start to see the outer picture does begin to shift. And people then are able to show up to you in all new ways. So more about this, I could do a million videos on this topic. It is so layered and there's so many different examples. And maybe I'll do that. But I'm going to let you go for now. If you have any questions about this or you want clarification, I would love if you visit me on Facebook at Inspired Healing and Awareness. Please post a comment or send me a message. I would love to connect. So have an absolutely brilliant day, and let's talk soon. Okay, bye-bye.